This is Abe Freetanzer from cinemadailyus.com, and I'm thrilled to be speaking with Rory Kennedy, the filmmaker behind Downfall, the Case Against Boeing, which is making its premiere at the Sundance Film Festival. How are you today, Rory?
I'm good, Abe. Nice to be here with you.
Yes, thank you so much for speaking with me.
Happy to, absolutely.
I had a chance to see this really powerful and intense film. I'm curious, at what point did you start really paying attention to what was happening with Boeing?
Yeah, well, I had been aware of the first crash, the Lion Air crash, and really started focusing on this story once, we saw two crashes of the same plane within 5 months of each other. As one of our characters says in the film, this just doesn't happen in modern aviation, right? And I was really upset reading about the sheer number of people who had died in these two accidents. 346 people had lost their lives. And I really wanted to know what happened, who was responsible for this, who knew what when, and how can we learn from it so that it doesn't happen again.
And I think your approach is also very interesting because if I remember correctly, we start with a journalist and the widowed wife of a pilot. And I think it's very interesting. There's a very human side of this story, which you really focus a lot. Was that intentional?
Well, I think those are, they are us, right? I fly, you fly, I'm sure you fly, I don't want to presume, but I think most of us fly in the world, and, our children fly. And when we go down that jetway, historically, I've trusted the process. I've trusted that the airlines is going to look after me, that the manufacturer, the people who built this plane are going to make it safe. They're incentivized to make this thing safe, that, the FAA and the regulators are going to make sure that there's a balance here and that the public safety is being looked after, that Congress is going to do their job. And I really feel that it all failed. And I was shocked to find out the depth to which all of these systems failed in this instance.
Yeah, no, it is really, really very surprising and horrifying in a lot of ways. And the air travel industry is now under a new kind of stress with COVID. Do you think that manufacturers are similarly driven to, money-driven shortcuts, or do you think safety really is a priority now more than ever?
Well, I think Andy Pastor says it well, and he's our dogged journalist who's been chasing down this story and has been following aviation, loves aviation, been doing this for many decades now. And he ends the film and kind of his reflection back on this story is we all need to be skeptical. And we need to remain skeptical. And, I continue to have a number of reservations and concerns about the safety of these, particularly the 737 Maxes at this point.
Yeah. Was there anything that really surprised you in your research, aside from just the sheer volume of, screw ups in this process?
Well, I think I was really shocked to learn as the film documents that Boeing knew as far back as 2013 that this MCAS system was on the plane and was of concern and was trying to hide it from the FAA and from the regulators and really from the rest of us. And so it's been a long time coming. And then I was also, and that's documented in the film with memos that were written, inside of Boeing that we showcase. And in addition to that, this 2016 coordination sheet memo that we also came across was another internal document from Boeing that said that if pilots, if there was a miscommunication with the AOA sensor, which was sort of where the data was coming into the computer, and the sensor on the side of the airplane gets knocked off by birds or whatever, things happen to it. There's one sensor. And if that was broken and there was erroneous information sent to the computer system, the MCAS system, that the pilots needed to respond within 4 to 10 seconds, or the result would be catastrophic. And catastrophic means that the plane will crash and everybody on it will die.
Wow.
And so they knew that back in 2016, before the plane went up into the air, and they still let the plane go up into the air. So, that was very disheartening and concerning. And then I think the other big punch that I experienced when I learned it was, between the two crashes, there was a Terram report that was put out that said, this was after the first crash, before the second crash, that said that there was a likelihood that this plane would crash 15 times over the course of its lifetime. And they still let that plane stay in the air, knowing that. The FAA
that wasn't considered an acceptable, that was an acceptable number somehow.
Yeah, but it's not, it's, for people, it's a gut check, right? Do you want, no, none of us want to have those statistics on any planes that we're on or anybody else is on. And if you ask, if you ask DeFazio was saying this morning, actually, that should not happen, should not have happened. There's no excuse for that plane to have gone back into the air. And, ultimately, it's a decision that was driven by profits. So you're taking a gamble on people's lives because you're going to make more money if that plane's up in the air.
Yeah. Well, you do have a lot of industry participation here. Was it difficult to get pilots and other aviation experts to participate?
It took some doing, for sure. I think that, I think for a lot of people, there had been a range of different kinds of coverage on this. We struggled, for example, with securing the wife of the pilot of the Lion Air crash, Garama Sethi. And, she was anxious that we were going to make a film that blamed the pilots. And she was anxious because of that, because that's what Boeing had done. And as Boeing did it translates down, it trickles down, and then people in her orbit do it. And then people approach her and they blame her husband. Right. So I think there were people like that who were skeptical, and nervous, and had bad experiences in the past. So it was a process of helping people to understand, how diligent we were going to be in this process, how it was going to be. I was determined for it to be very fact-based, to be very document-based. We don't have a narrator in this film. We really have the people who were on the front lines of this story as it was unfolding. So we have the dogged journalist who chased the story from the beginning. We have the pilot, the wife of the pilot who died on the Lion Air crash. We have Michael Stuma, whose daughter died in the Ethiopian plane tragically. We have the congressman who led the investigation. And then we have Boeing, people from Boeing who worked on this airplane, who worked in these factories, who really can give us a deeper understanding of what was happening from Boeing's perspective. And then we have pilots, who are meant to take these, to steer these aircraft and take them to safety and protect their passengers. So I do feel like the film is told in this kind of firsthand experience as the story unfolds, and you're really understanding it as it happens.
I agree. I think it's very thoroughly researched and certainly very, very balanced in terms of its coverage. And you've been at Sundance before with previous projects. What is it like to premiere this year in a virtual setting?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I am disappointed to not be back in Park City. I love Park City. I was actually there for the holidays with my family, and have really grown to love the city and the people there. And I just love the experience of showing the film in a theater with all of the people who work so hard to make the film, and then all the people who are in the film. We had like 15 people coming who were in the film, coming from all over the world. And so there's something disappointing to not be able to be there and kind of soak up the audience response, you know. But I think Sundance has done a great job pivoting. And I feel like a lot of people know about our film and are going to be watching it today for its premiere. And I think it's really nice to open it up to people all over the world who wouldn't necessarily be able to come to Sundance. So I think there's some positives, and I'll leave it at that.
And the film, of course, is headed after that to Netflix, which is another non-theatrical experience, but a very wide net. How do you feel about that? And what has been the process working with Netflix for this project?
Netflix has been fantastic. And, you know, they've been great partners and super supportive. And I think that this is, you know, it's a pretty hard hitting film. And they really encouraged me to make the film that I felt like needed to be made, and to, of course, have it be fact-based and fully fact-checked, which it thoroughly is. So I feel very good about having it go out in the world, and then, of course, goes out into 190 countries with the press of a button. So that's fantastic, because one of the reasons we make these films is for people to see them and be impacted by them, and hopefully be moved. And I think part of the reason I wanted to make this film is to say, we all do need to be skeptical, and we all do need to make demands, and we have to make sure that we know what kind of plane we're getting on, and do the research, and is it a safe aircraft, and demand transparency so we know, we can see what kind of airplane we're on, and that we elect officials like DeFazio, who's going to make sure that these regulators are doing their job and holding these corporations accountable.
Yeah, certainly. What are you doing with this passion next? Do you have another project you're working on?
I have a few projects that I'm working on now, yes, which I'm excited about.
That's great. That's great. Well, I thank you so much for speaking with me today. Anyone watching, by the time you watch this film will have made its premiere at the Sundance Film Festival and will be available on Netflix on February 18th. Thank you again, Rory, and looking forward to seeing what you do next.
Okay, Abe, talk to you soon.